Do you, Yahoo?
Start your day with Lycos.com.
The IT revolution will create over 1 million new jobs in the next year.
You know, you've been curious about this whole what if thing, so let's dive into this article, you know? It explores like what the world would be like without Google. It covers all kinds of things, from searching to smartphones and ads and even like internet culture.
Yeah. I mean, it really makes you think about how much we rely on Google. You know, like we don't even realize it.
Right.
Taking it away really forces us to reconsider like how we find information and how we use technology and how we connect with each other online.
It's like Google's become like the internet's operating system or something, you know?
Yeah.
But let's start with the most obvious thing, searching. Like we use it for everything. If Google never existed, would we even be able to find anything online?
Well, we'd still have search engines for sure, but the experience would be way different.
Okay.
Like think back to the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yahoo, Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves.
Oh, yeah.
They worked, right.
Yeah.
But they used much simpler algorithms than what Google developed, you know.
So searching back then was like, what? It's just scrolling and like hoping for the best?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Google's PageRank algorithm, that was a game changer.
Okay.
It didn't just look for keywords.
Right.
It actually analyzed the relationships between different websites to figure out which ones were like the most important and the most relevant. Without it, the search results, I mean, they wouldn't be as accurate and they'd be way harder to like sort through.
Wait, hold on, back up a sec. PageRank, like for those of us who, you know, aren't like coding experts.
Right, sure.
What is that exactly?
So PageRank, think of it like a popularity contest for websites.
Okay.
Every link to a website is kind of like a vote, and Google uses that information to rank websites based on their importance. So the more votes that a page gets from other like high quality sites, the higher it shows up in the search results.
Oh.
And that's actually what made Google so much better at like finding what you were looking for.
Okay, so no PageRank means we'd be stuck with like a way less efficient, less accurate internet.
Pretty much.
But how would that affect like, you know, our daily lives?
Well, imagine trying to, let's say, research a medical condition
Okay.
without Google's knowledge graph, for example. Instead of getting, you know, like a nice summary at the top of the page, you'd be clicking through pages and pages of links to different medical journals and research papers.
Yes.
Trying to figure out what's relevant and what's reliable would be a nightmare.
What about businesses? So much of advertising and like connecting with customers happens online these days.
Right, exactly. Google AdWords, or Google Ads as they call it now, it completely changed online advertising. I mean, it gave businesses a way to really target specific audiences based on like what people are searching for, their interests.
Okay.
Without it, online advertising would be, I mean, far less like sophisticated.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be as effective.
Wouldn't like other search engines have made their own advertising platforms though?
They probably would have, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely they would have matched Google's like reach.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Remember, Google's ad revenue is what fuels so much of its innovation.
Right.
Without that financial engine, it's hard to say if anyone else could have like invested in developing such a complex advertising system.
That makes me wonder, would small businesses even like stand a chance online without that level playing field that Google made?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, without Google's commitment to making advertising work for businesses of all sizes, it's very likely that online commerce would be like dominated by huge companies with tons of money. And that would have a massive effect on like entrepreneurs and innovation in general.
It's like Google leveled the playing field, but without them, it tilts back to like the big guys.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered search and advertising. What about like the devices we use to even get online? Smartphones, for instance.
You've used a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
Imagine if Android never existed.
Are you saying it would be like the dark ages of smartphones?
Pretty much, yeah.
Like just expensive, limited devices that like only a few people could afford.
Yeah, I mean, Apple's iOS would probably dominate the market.
Right.
And while they've made, you know, amazing strides in mobile technology,
Yeah.
Android being open source was really important. It made smartphones affordable and it made them available to like a global audience.
Right. Android like opened up the market to all these other manufacturers, which led to more competition and like lower prices and ultimately more choices for everyone.
Exactly. Without Android, I mean, innovation in smartphones might have like slowed way down. We might have fewer apps, more expensive phones, and like a bigger gap between the people who can afford the latest technology and those who can't.
It's a good thing Google came along and shook things up a little.
Yeah.
Speaking of shaking things up, I rely on Google Maps for, well, almost everything.
Right.
Getting around would be like a nightmare without it.
Think about it. No real-time traffic updates. No Street View to check out a new restaurant. No easy way to discover those cool little hidden spots in your city.
Yeah.
Or plan a road trip.
Oh, I remember those pre-Google Maps days. Printing out directions for MapQuest, hoping I wouldn't miss a turn, and ending up completely lost anyway. It was definitely an adventure. I'll give it that.
Yeah.
But not always a fun one.
Without Google Maps, I mean, we'd be back to those way less reliable, less user-friendly methods.
Yeah.
It wouldn't just be inconvenient. It would affect businesses, the ones that depend on location-based services or delivery services. Even emergency responders, they use it.
Right. It's crazy how something as simple as a navigation app has become so important to us.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, right? We depend on technology to make things easier, and I mean, Google's really good at figuring out what we need.
Absolutely. And it's not just about convenience. I mean, Google Maps has had a huge impact on businesses.
Okay.
Especially in the travel and tourism industries. Imagine planning a vacation without being able to just search for hotels and restaurants and attractions on a map.
That's true. I never really thought about how much Google Maps has shaped how we travel and experience new places.
Yeah. And speaking of hidden infrastructure that we totally depend on.
Okay.
Let's talk about something that's a bit more behind the scenes. Cloud computing. Cloud computing is what powers all those websites you visit.
Okay.
The apps you use, even the photos that you store online.
Okay.
Google Cloud is a major player in all this. I mean, they provide the infrastructure for businesses to store data, run their applications, and scale up their operations. Google Cloud, along with, companies like Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, they've played a huge role in making this whole cloud computing thing accessible and affordable, especially for smaller businesses and startups.
Okay. But what if Google hadn't gotten involved in cloud computing? Would it be that different?
Well, I mean, the cloud would probably still exist, but it might not be as advanced or as competitive.
Oh.
Google really pushed things forward. They've helped lower costs for everyone. Without them, I mean, businesses might be facing higher prices, fewer choices, and maybe slower development of new technologies, like artificial intelligence and machine learning, that kind of stuff.
We've covered a lot already, but I'm really curious about the cultural impact of a world without Google. Can you even imagine the internet without YouTube?
Oh, wow.
That's where things get really interesting, I think.
Yeah. YouTube's impact on internet culture is, I mean, it's massive. It's undeniable.
Right.
It's given anyone who has a camera and internet access, it's given them a platform
Yeah.
to reach, I mean, a global audience.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think about how much content's out there and how it's changed how we watch things and how we find entertainment.
I know. I spend way too much time on YouTube. But, I mean, I've also learned so much from it. From DIY videos to, documentaries,
Right.
comedy, music videos. It's all there.
It's all there, yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine another platform getting that big without Google's, support, I mean, their resources, their infrastructure, it all played a huge role in YouTube's success. They had the servers, the bandwidth, and the marketing power to turn it into a global phenomenon.
Well, wouldn't other video sharing sites have popped up? There were other ones out there, even back then.
Yeah, there were, definitely.
Yeah.
But none of them had that same combination of, features, ease of use, and that global reach that YouTube had.
Right.
And remember, YouTube wasn't just about watching videos,
Yeah.
It was about creating a community.
Yeah.
The comment section, the ability to subscribe to channels, that whole social aspect, that was a big part of its, appeal.
You're right. It became this huge online community.
Yeah.
Where people could share what they're into, connect with other people, and even start their own careers.
Right.
Think about all those YouTubers who are actual celebrities now,
Yeah.
Musicians, comedians, gamers.
Oh, yeah.
Beauty gurus, educators. It's crazy.
It really is. I mean, without YouTube, a lot of those creators, they might never have found their audience. It's hard to overstate the platform's impact on individual careers and the whole creative landscape.
It's given so many people a voice, a chance to, like, share what they're good at with the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what about, like, the impact on those traditional media companies?
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
YouTube kind of disrupted everything, didn't it?
for sure. It forced those like traditional media companies to rethink what they were doing and like adapt.
Yeah.
They couldn't just stick with TV and radio anymore.
Right.
They had to find a way to like connect with people online.
And some of them did embrace it, right?
They did, yeah.
Like late night talk shows, they started putting clips on YouTube. So like, on one hand, YouTube challenged these traditional media companies, but on the other hand, it forced them to like change and come up with new ideas.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it is with technology, right?
Yeah.
It can disrupt things, but it can also be creative. And in the case of YouTube, I mean, the creative impact has been massive.
It's made information and entertainment more accessible,
It's hard to imagine what online culture would even be like without it.
right?
We might be missing out on like entire types of content. Memes that never went viral, social movements that never got any traction.
It's crazy to think about all the ripple effects.
Yeah.
And it's not just like random people uploading videos, right?
Yeah.
You've got universities putting their lectures online, museums doing virtual tours, like experts in all these different fields sharing what they know.
Exactly. YouTube's become this incredible resource for like lifelong learning.
Right.
It breaks down the barriers to education and lets people explore what they're curious about. And think about research, you know.
Yeah.
YouTube has made it easier to share things like scientific discoveries, medical breakthroughs, new technologies. Without that, like open platform for sharing knowledge, progress in those fields could be way slower.
It's really amazing to think about how Google has touched so many parts of our lives.
Yeah.
From how we find stuff, how we learn, how we have fun, even how we connect with each other. It makes you wonder, like, what other innovations are we missing out on because Google doesn't exist? Man, thinking about a world without Google, it's kind of like, I don't know, looking through a weird lens. Like, everything's familiar, but there are these big pieces missing.
Yeah.
But, like, what does that actually mean for us, the people who use it? What can we, like, take away from this whole thought experiment?
Well, it makes us think about the tools we use every day. You know, we just take Google for granted. It's just there, making our lives easier.
Right.
But this deep dive, it really shows how much we depend on this one company for so much of our digital lives.
Right.
And it makes us think about, like, what are the downsides of that?
Yeah. It's easy to get used to the convenience and forget that there are, like, trade-offs.
Right.
I mean, Google collects a ton of data about us, right?
Yeah.
What happens to all that information if they weren't around with their, like, privacy policies and security measures?
That's a really important point. I mean, Google's gotten some criticism for how they collect data, but they've also put a lot of work into security and privacy. If they weren't around setting the standards, things could be a lot riskier for users.
Okay.
We might be more vulnerable to like data breaches or, you know, targeted advertising that's creepy, even censorship.
That's a little scary to think about. This whole deep dive has made me appreciate what Google's done in those areas.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, like, perfect, it makes you remember that we need to be aware of how our data is being used and what could happen to it.
Absolutely. It also pushes us to think about, like, what if things had been different?
Okay.
What if other companies or like innovations had come along? Would the internet be like more fragmented, harder to use?
It's interesting to imagine those, like, alternative paths. Like, maybe we'd have a bunch of different search engines for different things.
Yeah.
One for research, one for shopping, whatever.
Yeah, or maybe online advertising would be totally different, like not so reliant on personal data.
Right. It's impossible to know for sure, but that's what makes this whole thing so interesting to think about. It reminds us that the internet is always changing. What seems essential today could be gone tomorrow.
Exactly.
And maybe thinking about a world without Google could actually, like, inspire new ideas and help the next generation of, like, tech people come up with even better solutions.
I like that.
So I think it's safe to say this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
Definitely.
From the everyday stuff to the really big stuff, Google's influence is everywhere. But trying to imagine a world without them makes us ask some important questions about technology's place in our lives. We encourage you, our listeners, to, like, keep this conversation going. What are your thoughts on a world without Google?
Yeah.
What innovations do you think we'd be missing? Share your thoughts, your what-if scenarios, and let's keep exploring together. That's what the deep dive is all about.
Until next time.